Today I am delighted to speak with Patrick Williams. Patrick, you are a luminary in creativity, innovation, and the arts with over 4 decades of experience as an artist. You are also a TEDx speaker, and your expertise extends to awakening business innovation, fostering creativity in entrepreneurs, and exploring the intersection of spirituality and consciousness in the creative process. You are passionate about teaching the, as you say, accessible and trainable skills of creativity and innovation. Patrick, welcome to Personal Development Mastery.
I'm happy to be here, Agi.
So am I, and very excited for this conversation, exploring with you creativity, imagination, and the spiritual element of it as well, which I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts. I would like to start this conversation with a specific part of your story, which actually you talk about it in your TEDx talk. So there was a point that you said that you were, a very young man and moved into a new house or studio, and you had your first painting, the kit, and you said at that point that you audaciously named yourself an artist at that time, and that was transformational. So when I heard you say that, I realized, this power of the identity that we give ourselves or is given to ourselves. So I would like to hear a bit about that particular part of your story, and then we will move to, more discussing creativity.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The transition was when I was 10, and at that point we had a very small house, and it's the only house that I lived in growing up. And my two sisters had a bedroom, and my mom and dad had a bedroom, and there was no bedroom for me. So I slept in the living room on the couch. And for the last few years, until I was about 13, I had a fold-out bed that was a couch that could be folded out at night and put back in the morning. Mm-hmm. So the transformation started when I was 10, and then I worked on basically teaching myself how to draw. And the bigger transformation happened, the audacious part was more happening when I got my bedroom, and then I had a place to put up an easel, and then I started painting. And I had been making large drawings for quite a few years before that, and really I knew when I was starting to teach myself how to paint, I knew I was an artist for sure, but I had started calling myself an artist before that. Mm-hmm. And some of that was the way I was thinking, and possibly telling myself that I was, rather than telling too many people that I was. Lots of people were calling me an artist because I could draw well, and if there was anything in the classroom that needed to be drawn, I was the go-to kid in the class. So it built from there. But once I started painting, I really knew that there was something going on that was bigger than I realized.
Thank you. It was, you were saying it's not only what you say to others, but also that reflects on how we talk about ourselves and how we refer to ourselves. So it's, I appreciate that, because I have also been in a similar, way of trying to, by calling myself an identity, to step into the role of that. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because I think it is something that we can all use, but I liked very much the audaciously, that word that you used.
Truly.
If do you want to add anything to this, or shall we move on to the more juicy
And we
things?
let's move on to the next step.
Absolutely, absolutely. I let's discuss creativity, which is something that I understand you teach that it's something for everyone and not for the selected few. I'm using my own words here. Patrick, let's start by asking you, how do you define creativity?
Yeah,
It's,
that's a
you
good
talk
question.
about it, we're talking about it, but it's one
Right.
of those words that some people might not explicitly understand the concept.
It's very true. And I'm during the using the TEDx as a reference, the part of the talk that I completely forgot at the end of the talk, there's a whole bunch of things that happened during that day that was very challenging and
Mhm.
stressful.
Mhm.
And the part of the talk that I forgot right at the end was the definition of creativity that my wife came up with.
Mhm.
And it's I hesitate to step off to the side. I have it pinned to my studio wall right now. So maybe what I'll do, I'll send it to you, and you can put it in the show notes, maybe. Uh, and I can't remember it directly offhand, but it has to do with accessing higher levels of awareness
Mhm.
and trusting and uh, pushing yourself to go as deeply as possible with your imagination, with your mind, with your intellect as well, and and allowing yourself to achieve what is deeply inside of you that's unique. Everybody has a uniqueness to them.
Mhm.
And when I speak about creativity, I'm not necessarily directly speaking about the arts, but the art is the easiest way for all of us to see, oh, that person did something creative. It's more challenging for all of us to recognize and to honor the creativity that we express in our daily life, day in, day out, week in, week out. So when I speak to people about creativity, I reference the arts, and
Mhm.
partly because I'm an artist, but I also assist them in understanding that the access to being creative and connecting to our own inner creativity is something that we can all do and we can all express in different levels.
Mhm.
So when people are starting out, I don't certainly I don't expect it, but I literally don't want them to start thinking of them as an artist or that they have to pick a genre of art like painting or dance or architecture or whatever it might be. I
Mhm.
just want them to start simply connecting to how they were creative when they were children and remembering what they loved to play, and that will give them hints of how they can access their creativity. It's inside; it can't go anywhere. It's always
And,
there.
and we'll get into that in a moment on how we can tap into it and bring it back to life for those that might have disconnected with it. I'm very glad that you made the clarification that when you talk about creativity, you don't necessarily mean art, because in some people's minds it might be completely correlated, but creativity, I'm glad how you I like how you described it
Mm.
in daily life. Yes. So, and I also enjoyed very much that part of the definition that you said, that it is accessing a higher level of awareness, and
Mm.
I will, I will keep that phrase, because there is more I want to discuss with it. And actually, I will ask now. So, since I brought it up, this way that you said it, accessing higher levels of awareness, for me, in my ears or in my way of understanding words, this sounds like a very spiritual thing to say. So, how does creativity and spirituality, or what is the spiritual aspect
Mm.
of creativity?
Mm. Yeah, great question. I don't think that they're separate. I don't think you could tease them apart. They're 100% reliant on each other. So I'm sure that there are plenty of people who identify as materialists, and I mean that in they believe that the world, the universe is made up only of matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are all of us, others, who think that there's something more to existence,
Yes.
that there is a whatever we call it. There are so many ways to God, the universe, spirit, divine, all
Mm-hmm.
those words, many, many more, thousands of 10,000 more. Uh, I believe that exists. So when I'm in that role of being creative,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm moving toward an idea that I want to express, I have to. Well, I don't have to. I choose to tune myself into the part of myself that has a higher awareness. That is, we all know what that feels like. We many of us may only have tiny glimpses of it every once in a while, but for sure when that happens, we know that something remarkable is happening. Even the most staunch skeptics or atheists have those moments of the light bulb going on, or
Yeah.
a huge heartfelt love for a parent or a sibling, or uh, a one of their children, or their partner. Everybody knows those moments when our awareness is more in tune with the divine. The easiest way, well, my way of saying it right now. Uh, so in the creative process, so
Mm-hmm.
there's levels to creativity, where creativity can be when you're attempting to ideate something, come up with the idea of a painting or a symphony or a poem, a piece of prose, a dance, whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
or a widget in innovation. There's the ideation part, and then there's the paint to canvas or linen, or pencil to paper, feet to the floor if you're a choreographer. Those are creativity is happening then also, but those are two flavors, so to speak, of creativity that are super important. And both of them have, I believe, both of them need, ideally, in the
Mm-hmm.
best of possible worlds, they you you merge with the divine in both those processes. And when you, I believe, when you do that, more happens. More is available to your awareness, because
Mm-hmm.
you're expanding your awareness, and you're focusing it into a receptive level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
No, it certainly
Oh,
does.
good, good.
Uh, this well, you said many things in there, and this I will come back to the words to tune into. I think you said into
Mm,
that part, this higher awareness, and let me ask straight away then. Let's get something practical here,
mm,
because I hear you what you're saying. It's great to be connected through this higher awareness you want to call it divine, I will add some more names to the list that you said earlier.
Please.
The field of consciousness, or the infinite intelligence, or
Mhm.
whatever else it's out there. The directors, the great directors
Mhm.
of all. So it's great to, and I believe what you said, that we have all felt it. Yes, we have. Maybe we have not realized that it was that, but as you said, those aha moments when there is this deeper knowing. It's
Mhm.
not knowledge, or it is a knowing. So give me one practice, one exercise that one can, start incorporating into their daily life to be able to tune into that part of themselves, or of the whole.
Sure. There are so many to
Absolutely.
yeah. The I feel like the one of the most basic exercises that not only do we all have access to, but all of us do every single day,
Hmm.
we have to, is taking some time during the day and allowing yourself to focus on your breathing.
Okay.
Simply sit and find a quiet moment. This doesn't have to be a large meditative process. Accessing our creativity is relatively simple in some ways.
Hmm.
That it takes a quality of self-awareness, introspection, and your breathing is an absolutely spectacular way to do that. There are probably tens of thousands of tutorials on good breathing on YouTube. So I'll let
Hmm.
everybody who's interested in explore those. Find the one that really resonates with you. But
Hmm.
simply taking 2, 3, 4 times a day to take 10 breaths, and people will think, "Oh, that's a piece of cake." But when you're sitting and focusing on your breath, you'll find that there are all kinds of distractions and all kinds of little things running through your mind,
Hmm.
uh, starting to take you away from. Was that the fourth breath or the seventh breath? So, or was it the third? So these things are common. And those are good. They're really good things to experience. Partly because when you're in that state of relaxation and focus on your breath, that is the beginning of the practice to connect to your creativity. And if you do it, one of my core things to focus on is helping people take divergent experiences and bring them together. So breathing and creativity are two totally divergent, in some ways, ideas and practices, and
Yes.
bringing them together. Another very important is to be in nature at some level, even if it's just a little patch of grass outside of your apartment, or if you're in New York City, get to the Central Park. It is nature. Spend time in nature. Nature is our biggest teacher. And in my TEDx talk, I the woods were my teachers. The trees there were my teachers. And that experience allowed me to be more in touch with my creativity, I firmly believe. So breathing and nature, the first two important steps, I think, is for your creativity awakening.
Thank you. Both of them are so incredibly simple, and
Mm.
yet so incredibly powerful once someone actually does them.
Yes.
So thank you.
Mm.
Patrick, there is another element that is connected to creativity. I read something that you had said, and that is you were saying that embracing our vulnerability
Mm.
enhances our creativity. So, can you elaborate on the connection between vulnerability and creativity?
This is a super important part, Agi, and I feel well. There's a lot of my. I have a philosophy of creativity, and
Hmm.
this touches on that we all experience a kind of creative colonization and a kind of what I call creative collapse. And and because of those two items, we often, a lot of us feel a kind of vulnerability around our creativity. So we feel like we don't want to go there because it's a little scary, or we had some experiences when we were children that weren't too good and we want to avoid. Yet, as someone who is starting out to explore their restoration of their creativity, it's super important to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with the sense that we're also safe, that nothing horrible is going to happen to us in the process. Go ahead.
Can you give me an example when you say being vulnerable about? Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. I'll write from my easel right now. I am making a watercolor of a statue of George Washington.
Okay.
So I have to be, there's a vulnerable part. I have to allow for myself to be vulnerable in my process of trying to find George. So I'll unpack that a little.
All right.
The making a statue of of my next door neighbor would be fairly easy because nobody knows
Yes.
in the world what my next door neighbor looks like.
Mhm.
In the US, pretty much everybody knows what George Washington looks like. So
Yes.
I have to allow myself all the mistakes
Okay.
of trying to find the right lines on the paper that will represent George Washington,
Mhm.
because everybody will say, that doesn't look like George Washington if it doesn't look like George Washington. So I have to be vulnerable in my process of that's not right,
Mhm.
being willing to try it again, try it again, try it again. Sometimes it happens right away, but sometimes it takes quite a few tries.
Yeah.
I had a project recently that it's still sort of it's still developing, but I painted the Beatles, and John and George came out just fine, but Ringo and Paul, nope, didn't. They well, they weren't at the standard that I wanted them to be at.
Mhm.
So I painted over Ringo and I changed Paul into another another kind of figure, maybe like Paul's great grandfather. So there is a vulnerability
Right.
that people are hesitant to explore, but it's necessary. Even as I've been painting for a long time, I'm still vulnerable. I'm still the portraits. I've just started doing portraits this year, and I hardly know anything about making portraits, but I'm my I'm willing to embrace my vulnerability of doing it really, really badly, and then increasing more and more and more and more. So, did was that somewhat explanatory?
Yes, it was, and
Okay, good.
it reminded me, or it resonated, and I realized I hadn't thought of it in such a way before. But
Mm,
also with me, I have done many podcasts. However, it's still every single time I have to embrace the fact that this vulnerability, as you said, because I might mess up, I might, completely miss the whole depth of a conversation and
Mm,
stay on the surface, or whatever other factors that I realize now that they are inherent with, the creative process. You are creating something, so you can't, predict always what will happen, or maybe you can't anyway. So thank you. I got the explanation or the example that you said. Thank you.
excellent. Excellent. And you're also being very creative in your process of putting the podcast together,
Hmm.
as well as what I love is that there's a quality of improvisation that is super creative. Whenever someone, whatever the action is, and there's a necessity to be improvisational, then there's a tremendous amount of creativity happening. And what you're doing right now, as we're talking, is being improvisational and creative. I love that. You do it really well.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. It's I like the descriptions that you put, or that it is very. I hadn't thought of it like that,
Mm,
but it certainly is, and yeah, I will hold that and keep it as a point of self-reflection earlier.
good.
But I appreciate it, Patrick. There is. I would like to squeeze one more, practical or exercise that the listener can incorporate. I would like to ask for one that is related to, you mentioned the imagination. So
Mm,
can you share a practice that we can do to enhance our imagination?
sure, absolutely. And this is a practice that I do every single day, and uh, I've done as a capital P practice for I think 6 years plus.
Hmm.
But then
Mm.
I was starting my journal with circles before that. So it has been going on for maybe 10 years or maybe 10 plus years. So and the practice is very simple. You get a piece of paper and or well, you'll get several pieces of paper and
Okay.
and divide the paper in half twice. So you have four squares if you're using a like print paper.
Hmm.
And in each of start with one square and draw two circles and make marks. And then you will maybe know when you want to go to the next square and repeat, draw two circles and make marks, and then repeat and do that several times and spend at least maybe 10 minutes on each square, drawing two circles and making marks. And ideally, that's all I tell people.
Okay.
But the connection to imagination is for you to make as many different kinds of marks as possible. Does that make sense?
Not completely. I
Okay.
get I get the two circles. When you say make marks, what exactly do you mean?
Marks can be straight lines. They can be squiggly lines. They can be little circles that
Whatever
you
it is that we want,
what
any marks you mean. But the
whatever
two
you
circles have to be
imagine.
two circles. Whatever I imagine,
Yeah,
exactly.
this is the
Right.
imagination. So in my practice,
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm actually this year I'm drawing a square and a circle. In 2023, I drew three circles every
Right.
day. In 2022, I drew I just drew two circles, I believe. I'm not sure. In 2020, I drew two circles and I used colored pencil. That was the first time I used color in the drawing. So, and I do one every single day at the beginning of my journal.
Mm-hmm.
This often doesn't work too well, but that gives you, that's a
Right.
square and a circle. All
It's
right.
very elaborate,
It's
Patrick.
very, yeah.
Okay, when I was thinking of what I could create, I mean, it looks like a 3-year-old child painting compared to what you just showed
And
me.
and and that is, sometimes I don't show people,
Yeah.
so it leaves them in their imagination. And I also have an Instagram site, PMW Creativity, that has 6 or 7 years of my, I call them my uh, uh, meditation drawings, my daily morning meditation drawing. That's the
Right.
name of this, the concept. So,
Mm-hmm.
but the key is to use your imagination, and what I attempt to do is to surprise myself
Get it.
with coming up with something new, something different. How can I make marks differently? And in the years that I've been doing it, there are certainly types of marks that I love that repeat. There's
Mm-hmm.
certain ways that I put down lines that are similar, but they're never. Each one is very different, and the idea is to access that imagination level
Mm-hmm.
that will push you. It's like, ooh, I want to try this, and then once you do a couple dozen, you'll start to get the hang of it, and start to feel like, oh yeah, I love making these little squiggly marks, and how can I do that differently to make, we want to make something interesting. We want to not, it doesn't necessarily have to be beautiful, and beauty has a wide spectrum of what we consider beautiful. I want people to experience something enjoyable and interesting and challenging. Those are necessary. We need to have those in our framework that keeps us going. For me, after nearly 50 years of making paintings, like I said earlier, I started making portraits this year. And whoa, what a challenge. Incredible challenge. Just like straight up vertical learning curve, but exciting, fun, and pushing me, which is great. And this is an exercise to get people's imagination to expand, and to get people used to using their imagination again.
It's you have certainly intrigued me very much with it, so I'm going to try this
Good,
practice for as you said, a couple of dozen times at least, and
at least.
I'll get back to you with my
Excellent.
what happens.
I love that.
Patrick, where do you want to direct a listener that wants to find out more about you?
Sure. I have a few websites. I
Mhm.
have my I have two art sites. One is patrickwilliams.com. The
Okay.
other is celebrationflowerpaintings.com. And I think people can see some of the portraits on patrickwilliams.com. I did one of Goethe, the German writer, poet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, and that's the best so far. So I'm very excited about that. And then I have a business site, and that can be accessed as satoriinnovation.com, also patrickwilliamsstaycreative.com. That's the real site. I have a pointer. I like the name Satori Innovation better. So, and since I mentioned them, PMW Creativity
Mhm.
is one of my Instagram sites. And I also have PMW_camera, which I post a photograph every day. It's a painter's photographic eye, I call it.
Thank you. Patrick, before we close, I have two really quick fire questions that I always ask my guests. So, in one or two sentences for each. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Striving, pushing ourselves, sometimes gently and sometimes more intensely. That's for myself. That's how I feel like I have developed personally by uh, and of course sometimes I'm too gentle and sometimes I'm too pushy. It's the wisdom is knowing when to be gentle and when to push.
Indeed, yes, to distinguish between the two, to know the difference.
Absolutely.
And a quick fire hypothetical question. Let's say
Mm.
you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
Oh wow! Don't go too fast. Slow down. And my 18-year-old was really studying Picasso,
Mhm.
and Picasso was the poster child of going too fast. So so he did
Right.
he was not the best role model for me at the time. So I
Right.
would tell myself, just slow down, don't make too many paintings, don't make too many drawings, just focus on, in a way, making them better.
Patrick, I want to thank you very much for this truly fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it and believe we got some very valuable elements throughout. So thank you for that. I want to wish you all the very best with your mission and what you're doing. Uh, any last parting words?
uh, just everyone be creative.